government recently just did an audit. Come to find out, they did an audit and they found out that U.S. cops are selling heavy machinery. Listen to me, people. The U.S. government did an audit, found out that the U.S. at the American cops, all the cops, oh excuse me, in the United States, all the cops in the United States, basically, it's a lot. I ain't gonna say all, it's a lot, are selling weapons. And to be honest, I know they're not selling. And the crazy thing is, black people, slow down before you're getting a bunch of say, guess who they selling them weapons to? They're not selling them to us. They're selling these weapons across seas to Ukraine, Russian arm dealers. Oh my God. And guess how long guess how long this has been going on? 20 years. 20 years. They've been selling heavy machinery, heavy artillery weapons, assault rifles to other countries. Other countries. That's crazy. That's crazy. And they're just finding this out. So just imagine the other dirty, underhanded stuff that they do.
A CBS News investigation found dozens of law enforcement leaders buying and illegally selling guns. A review of government audits and court records over the last 20 years uncovered instances in 23 states across the U.S., plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., for a total of more than 50 cases. And people who were supposed to protect and serve were selling these high-powered guns and making a steep profit. Erin Couchy, who led this reporting, is here with me in Studio 57. She's a producer for a CBS News Crime and Public Safety Unit. Erin, this is so mind-boggling that these high-ranking officers are getting these guns and then they're selling them to criminals. In essence, the law enforcement officers are criminals themselves.
Right. So the key is that these weapons are usually deemed too dangerous to be on the street. So they're using their access as law enforcement officials to gain access to things that otherwise wouldn't be on the market. They're saying, we need this for our official duties to serve and protect, but actually they're secretly turning around and they're selling.
They're buying them because they're law enforcement officials, or they're requesting them? Tell me more.
It runs the gamut. So there were 50 cases all across the country, and there were different ways they got it. Sometimes they stole it out of the inventory. Sometimes they were their issued weapons by the department. In the most egregious cases, there were battlefield weapons, and that requires them to go to federal regulators, ask for special permission to gain access to them. And just to give you a sense of what kind of weapons these are, these could take out an armored tank. They could go through a building at the other side, hit a target 18 football fields away. They can take out a military helicopter. That's an example from a real case. We found an Iowa police chief in a 3-person police department. Town was the population of less than 800. And he had requested over the course of 4 years 90 machine guns to get access to. He'd gotten approval. It took until he requested a Gatling-style machine gun that spewed 6,000 rounds a minute for federal regulators to say there's something fishy going on and starting to look into it. He's now serving a 5-year prison sentence, but he's totally unremorseful about it. He just says it's a business. It's not illegal to sell things in this country, and he's appealing his sentence because he just doesn't think it's a crime.
Oh, this is a lot to take in, Erin. And when I'm looking through all of this material, I'm seeing here that your team also uncovered social media posts where the buyers are talking about how they got the officers to sell weapons. Tell me more about that.
So when you're talking about machine guns, you do have to go to the federal regulation because there's been an outright ban in the United States since 1986. No one can have access to them. The one exception is official government use. So they go to federal regulators, but all you need is a letter. It's functionally a permission slip. A police chief signs a letter saying, I need this for department use. So there's literally do-it-yourself videos on social media explaining there's online web forums, and it just comes down to relationships. There's some guys who said, I know a police chief, I know a sheriff, I know a SWAT guy. They just take turns signing these letters for me, and they make it like it's all for fun. Some of these guys just think it's fun to like literally mount it on an armored tank and just shoot it off into a field. And a lot of the guys is totally innocent, and that's what they do. But the problem is there are cases where they've ended up in the hands of criminals. So they've ended up with drug traffickers. They've ended up with arms dealers. There was a case where a police chief, a mayor, and a town, it was a member of the town council, were trafficking guns and tactical gear to a Mexican cartel. There was a case just last year where they all ended up pleading guilty. It was 2 police chiefs, a sheriff, a Delta Force veteran, all conspiring together with a sanctioned Russian arms dealer, and they ended up in the hands of an international gun trafficker. Again, all of that ended up pleading guilty, so we know for sure that they were doing that. And then there was a case in the Northeast where it ended up being used in a fatal gang shooting of a 14-year-old boy who was just standing at a high school football game and accidentally got shot. So most of the cases don't end up in those egregious situations, but they certainly have and do, and these are law enforcement officials.
And arguably, that's the whole reason why they're supposed to have these permission slips, because once they get out into the public, then they're uncontrolled, and then you don't know where they're going to go next. But I'm also seeing here that there's some former ATF agents that you spoke with that said that they were reluctant, actually, to charge these officers who sold the weapons. What's going on with that?
So we spoke to about half a dozen agents who were the lead investigators on some of these cases, and the officers themselves were the ones that, or sorry, rather the federal agents were the ones who were actually really frustrated with this. They wanted to bring these cases, but they each had an anecdote about how they'd had to go to the department they had caught doing this, who had been doing it repeatedly, almost like as a course of business, that they were getting these guns just for the express purpose of selling them, even though they were supposed to be their department weapons. And they just had to say, I'm letting you off with a warning. Prosecutors were generally reluctant to try these cases, according to them.
So it's the prosecutors, not the ATF.
It's a little bit of both. So they say the prosecutors don't really want to do it because the sentences are very light. Most of these cases, people make plea deals. They serve less than a year, just a few months in jail. But we got an ATF memo from a few years ago that described this as a growing trend. That was in 2017, and most of the cases we found actually have happened since then. So it seems to be, or it's hard to tell if it's happening more often or they're actually just going after it a little bit more now. But the memo said, it's our job to educate, not investigate. And I actually tracked down the senior agent who had written that memo, and he said, we generally take the posture, we don't question our law enforcement partners. They're our partners, we're just going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and it's really only in the very, very egregious cases that we actually pursue. So when they've gotten many, many warnings, when we've traced them directly to a crime, and that's when you start to see charges. So the more than 50 cases, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more out there that all these agents are saying, oh yeah, I said, how do I look that up in the court docket? You're not going to see anything.
Fascinating reporting. Erin Couchy, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
You can find Erin's full investigation into law enforcement illegally selling weapons on our website, cbsnews.com.